What happens when a grandfather just wants to read with his granddaughter, but they treat him like a burden? What his family did next will change everything in the most unexpected way. You ever try to do something decent, and the universe just throws a pie in your face? No warning, no explanation, just splat. And suddenly, you're the villain in someone else's narrative. That was my Monday. I woke up around 6:30. The kind of wake-up where your back makes more noise than the floorboards. You lie there for a minute thinking, is this it? Did I finally dislocate something in my sleep? Then you sit up, slowly, because speed isn't a luxury anymore. I shuffled into the kitchen, made my usual cup of instant regret. They call it coffee, I call it punishment, and stared at my trusty paper calendar. Yes, I still use paper. Sue me. I circled the day. Library with Ellie. You see, every Monday I pick up my 9-year-old granddaughter from school. We go to the library. We sit in that same corner chair under the heater. She reads about whales and ancient civilizations. I pretend I know what TikTok is. It's our tradition. At least, it was. Enter Brandon, my daughter's husband, tall, smug, and allergic to basic kindness. "You taking Ellie today?" he said while pouring almond milk over something that looked like gravel. "Of course," I said. "It's Monday." He didn't even look up, just smirked. "Yeah." Cynthia and I talked. "We think it's best if you take a step back." "A step back from what?" He shrugged. "From this whole routine. Ellie's got enough going on. We don't want her confused." Confused. That was the word he used. Like reading books with her grandpa was the gateway drug to mental instability. I didn't argue. I nodded, like a chump. "You could rake the backyard, though," he added. "Those leaves aren't going to rake themselves." So, I raked. With my knees barking and my back groaning like an old porch swing, I raked every inch of that yard. Because if there's one thing that keeps you sane when your own family is pushing you into a corner, it's doing something, anything, to remind yourself you still matter. But I didn't matter. Not to them. That afternoon, Cynthia came home with Ellie. I stood by the back gate, rake in hand, sweat dripping down my collar, ready to say hi. They walked right past me. No, hello. No, thanks for the clean yard. Ellie, my sunshine, my book buddy, didn't even glance up. That night, I heard Cynthia talking on the phone. "Yeah," she said, laughing. "He still thinks Ellie looks forward to those library trips. It's kind of sad. I mean, she's growing up. It hit me like a punch to the chest. You know the kind. Doesn't knock the wind out of you, just makes it hard to breathe." I went back to my room, sat on my creaky twin bed, the one they gave me when I moved in temporarily 4 years ago, and stared at the calendar. I peeled off the sticky note that said, "Library with Ellie," folded it in half, and slid it into the drawer. That was the first time I didn't mark the date. The week got worse. Tuesday. Brandon changed the Wi-Fi password, said it was for security. Wednesday. They asked me not to cook oatmeal in the kitchen anymore. Apparently, the smell was disruptive. Thursday. I wasn't allowed to sit in the living room during their family movie night. I was told it was just for the 3 of them. 3. Like I didn't count anymore. Friday. They locked the backyard gate, told me it was for Ellie's safety. Because, apparently, I'm now a threat. Sunday came. Ellie was laughing outside, a real laugh, the kind that bubbles up from the belly. I looked through the window. Brandon was throwing a football with her. Cynthia clapped like she'd just witnessed a miracle. Ellie caught the ball and looked up, saw me watching. Our eyes met. And for a split second, I thought I saw the little girl who used to run into my arms after school. Then she turned away. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at a blank wall. And I realized something. They didn't hate me because I did something wrong. They hated me because I reminded them of everything they wanted to forget. Commitment, love, time, patience. All the things that don't fit on a to-do list. I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was a habit, a burden, a leftover. But here's the thing about being a leftover. Sometimes the stuff people throw out turns out to be the only thing worth keeping. And I was done being disposable. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it all unfolded. They say you should pick your battles. But what if you wake up one day and realize you're the battlefield? That's what it felt like in week 2. I wasn't talked to. I was talked around. Like a vase that got moved to the corner. Still in the room, but definitely not part of the conversation. Cynthia and Brandon would stroll past me mid-discussion, mid-plan, mid-whatever. Like I was a side table. One morning, I overheard them whispering in the hallway. We just need more space. It's not fair to Ellie. Maybe we could talk to someone about getting him into, I don't know, some kind of group program? Group program? What the heck did that mean? I wanted to storm out, demand an explanation. But you learn to swallow indignation when it's your only ticket to shelter. So, I stayed silent. And let me tell you something. Silence is golden. But in this house, it was pure suffocation. By Wednesday, I was reduced to a series of tasks. Pick up the mail. Don't talk during dinner. Stay in your space. Use headphones when watching your shows. Oh, and my favorite, please avoid walking around the house during our work calls. You know what I started doing? Counting my steps. Literally. I turned into some kind of geriatric ninja, moving from room to room like I was sneaking into a vault. All to avoid disturbing the household. And all this because I loved my granddaughter too much? On Thursday, I got bold. I bought Ellie a book. It was the next one in the series we were reading together. I slipped it into her backpack with a note. From Grandpa. Thought you might like it. Felt good for a second. Like I'd reclaimed a little piece of the bond we used to have. Until Friday morning. Brandon slammed the book down on the kitchen table in front of me. Hard. We've asked you not to confuse her. I looked at him. Calm. Controlled. She loves to read, I said. I just thought, you're not listening. It's not your place. Not my place. Those 3 words sliced deeper than anything else he could have said. But the final nail? That came Saturday afternoon. Ellie had a school presentation, family day, parents, grandparents, all invited. I spent the night before ironing the one blazer I still owned, the one with the faded elbow patches and a button that never quite sat right. I even shaved. Carefully. I arrived at the school 10 minutes early, brought flowers, sat near the front, and waited, and waited. And then the lights dimmed. The show began, and the seat next to Ellie was filled by Brandon. Not me. No one had told me they changed the plan. No one had told me not to come. So I sat through the entire presentation like an idiot, clapping when they clapped, smiling like a man whose soul was splitting in half. Afterward, I tried to catch up with Ellie in the hallway. She saw me, then looked over her shoulder at her parents, and just kept walking. No hug, no, "Hi, Grandpa," not even a glance, like I was someone she wasn't supposed to talk to. I walked home in the cold, didn't wait for a ride, didn't ask questions, didn't cry. I just walked. Every step reminded me I wasn't losing her. They were taking her from me, piece by piece. word by word, day by day. That night, back in my room, my sacred cell, I opened the drawer, took out the sticky notes I used to write down our little memories. Ellie's shark phase, the time she fell asleep in my lap, that rainy day with hot cocoa. I read them, every single one. Then, without a word, I tore them into pieces. I wasn't going to keep memorializing something they were actively trying to erase. Here's the thing. There's a breaking point. Everyone has one. Even quiet, polite, bend-over-backwards grandfathers who rake leaves and say, "Thank you," when insulted. Mine was coming. And when it hit, well, let's just say I stopped waiting for permission to exist. This is the turning point. Everything you've been waiting for, it's here. Stick around to see how I finally started fighting back. You won't believe what I did next. Let me tell you about the day I snapped. And no, it wasn't some melodramatic tantrum or yelling match. That's not how it works when you're 74 and tired in your bones. It started like any other day. Cold cereal, cold shoulders, cold silence. Except this time, I didn't sit quietly. I watched Cynthia flutter around the kitchen like she was late to a meeting with God. Brandon sat on the bar stool, scrolling his phone, legs wide open like he owned the oxygen in the house. I cleared my throat. Nothing. I said, "Morning." Crickets. So I walked over, poured my coffee, and knocked Brandon's phone over. "Oh, sorry," I said. Flat tone. No smile. He looked up, stunned, like I'd kicked a puppy. "You all right, Walter?" I stared right at him. Never better. Now, this might sound small to you, petty even, but when you've been treated like a fixture for months, making direct eye contact is an act of war. That day, I decided to reintroduce myself to their world. Not by force, not with anger, but with presence. You see, they wanted me quiet, small, invisible. So I made noise. First move. I started taking my meals at the dining room table. Every one of them. I didn't ask. I didn't explain. I just pulled up a chair and ate like I belonged there. Because I did. Cynthia looked up from her laptop the first time and blinked like I'd appeared from a puff of smoke. "You good?" she asked. "Fantastic," I said, chewing loud enough to be heard over their Netflix. Second move, I printed photos of Ellie and me, old ones, smiles, hugs, laughter. I framed them, lined them up on the mantel. Not one, not two, 7. Brandon came home, saw them, and gave me a look like I'd peed in the houseplants. Bit much, don't you think? "Nope," I said, "just catching up. Didn't realize we had a memory shortage in this house." By Thursday, I did the unthinkable. I knocked on Ellie's door. She opened it, slowly, like I was the boogeyman. "Hey," I said, soft. "Just wanted to say I miss our Mondays. That's all." She looked unsure, nervous, like someone had told her I was radioactive. Then she nodded, barely. Not a smile, but not rejection either. It was something. A crack in the wall. Friday came, and I brought out the big guns. I called the school, requested to volunteer for their reading program, filled out the forms, passed the background check, got assigned to Monday afternoons. Same day Ellie used to read with me. I didn't tell Cynthia or Brandon. Didn't need to. They found out when I showed up, wearing a pressed shirt, a folder under my arm, and a name tag. Mr. Nolan, reading volunteer. The look on Cynthia's face when I walked into the library? Priceless. "Dad," she hissed, pulling me aside. "What are you doing here?" "I'm reading," I said. "What are you doing here?" "You didn't clear this with us." "It's a public school. I don't need to." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because she knew. Legally, she had nothing. And morally, she never did. That afternoon, Ellie saw me sitting with a group of third graders, holding a copy of Charlotte's Web. She froze in the hallway. I waved. She waved back. Tiny. Hesitant. But real. That night, the thermostat was locked again. My TV remote went missing. Brandon accidentally unplugged my lamp. The passive aggression returned, hotter, sharper. Like they knew they were losing control of the narrative. And you know what? I didn't care. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't being erased. I was carving my initials back into the woodwork of my own life. And then it happened. The moment everything shifted. Brandon made a speech, loud enough for Ellie to hear. "Some people don't know when they've overstayed their welcome," he said, while buttering his toast like it was a weapon. I smiled, picked up my plate, and said, "You're absolutely right." Then I left the room, walked outside, and called my lawyer. This was the moment the tables turned. But we're not done yet. The final chapter will show you exactly what I did, and why it changed everything. Don't go anywhere. It's all coming to light. I didn't set out to make things messy. That's not who I am. But there's a moment in every man's life, especially when he's been ignored long enough, when silence becomes surrender, and surrender starts to feel like a slow kind of dying. I wasn't ready to die. Not in that house. Not like that. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I called a lawyer. Now, this wasn't about suing. I didn't want to drag my daughter through court or embarrass the family name. I just wanted to talk, to understand what rights an old man had when he's been living in a house for 4 years, paying bills, buying groceries, raising a child who wasn't even technically his to raise, all without a single ounce of respect. Turns out, I had options. It's amazing what opens up when you stop asking for permission and start asking the right questions. The lawyer, a sharp, gray-haired woman named Carol, who smiled like she'd seen too many families like mine, sat across from me and said, "Walter, you've been providing what amounts to unpaid domestic support. You're not a guest, you're a contributor, you have leverage." Leverage. I hadn't heard that word used about me in years. I didn't tell Cynthia or Brandon what I'd done. Not yet. Instead, I started doing something even more threatening. I started packing. One box at a time, neatly, calmly, silently. It rattled them more than shouting ever could. Brandon cornered me in the hallway. "What's going on, Walter? You moving out?" "Maybe," I said. "Just organizing. You know how confusing things get when old people have too many things laying around?" He didn't laugh. He didn't blink. Because he felt it. The shift. The control. Slipping. But I wasn't done. I'd spent too long thinking small. It was time to go bigger. I scheduled a meeting with Ellie's school principal. I offered to fund a new reading corner in the library. Comfortable chairs, fresh books, even a mural. They accepted. I told them I'd like it named after someone. Not me, but Ellie. The Ellie Nolan Reading Nook. Because if they were going to erase me from her life, they were going to have to do it with my name staring them in the face every Monday afternoon. The plaque was installed 2 weeks later. Cynthia found out when Ellie came home with a photo of the ceremony. That evening, Cynthia stormed into my room. "You're manipulating her." I stood up, calmly. "I'm honoring her. You're the ones who tried to make her forget who she is. I'm just making sure she remembers." Brandon added, "This is our house." I looked around the room, the scuffed walls, the second-hand furniture, the small corner of the world I'd been boxed into. Not for long. I'd already found a new apartment, small, quiet, and mine. Paid for by the early pension check I hadn't touched in years, because I'd been too busy pouring everything into their household. The day I left, Ellie came home from school early. She saw the moving truck, ran up to me. "Are you going away forever?" I knelt down, looked her in the eye. "No, sweetheart, just far enough that I can finally breathe." She hugged me, tighter than she had in months, and slipped something into my pocket. Later that night, I found it, a drawing of the two of us, reading under a tree, labeled in shaky pencil, "Me and Grandpa." Mondays. A week after I moved out, Cynthia called. No apology, not exactly, but a weak, stumbling attempt at, "We didn't mean to push you out." I told her something I hadn't said in years. "You didn't push me out. You just showed me the door. I finally walked through it. And now? I volunteer every Monday, still at the school, still reading. Kids know me as Mr. Nolan. The principal calls me a treasure. I have coffee with neighbors who actually listen. I wake up and no one glares at me for using the microwave too early. I'm not a ghost anymore. I'm a man with a name, a voice, and a life. Let them keep their house. I've got my peace. And peace, my friend, that's the habit nobody talks about. The one that makes all the difference. This is how it ends. But maybe it's not the end at all. Maybe it's just the beginning of a life where kindness isn't mistaken for weakness. And love doesn't come with terms and conditions.